For as long as I can remember, there has always been a category of films in the very specific horror, thriller, mythical mystery genre that try so hard to become something iconic and profound, a story that transcends the intrigue of its own premise. And for this attempt, these films fall even harder when they inevitably miss their mark. A lot of these movies have come from a certain director of the last name Shyamalan. Shyamalan? Whatever. Yes, M. Night, the man himself. Known mostly for his highly divisive or even flat-out critically panned films that dabble in the supernatural and the flat-out super weird. Well, today's film in question, The Watchers, follows the same path, but this time it comes from a younger Shyamalan, his daughter, Ishana Night Shamyalan. Now, The Watchers sits at a whopping 32% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes with a 52% audience score as well. Not so good if you ask me. Like father, like daughter, I guess you could say. Now, if you haven't seen the film and you're wondering why people seem to walk away confused and disappointed, I'm going to break that down in today's video. We'll cover the entire story and try to make sense of it by the end and expose this film for what it truly is. And in my eyes, it was kind of a disaster piece. A fun watch with mysteries that unfold throughout, but with extremely poor world building, writing, boring characters, and lackluster payoffs. And of course, in classic Shyamalan tradition, we get a twist ending. So let's break this film down and see what it all really means. The film opens with a narration, a girl talking about a forest in the west of Ireland that doesn't exist on the map. We have a man running through the forest, trying to escape something, perhaps a monster or a predator of sorts. The narrating girl says it's a mysterious place. People don't know what's out there, and the people that do go there never come out. We see a point of no return sign labeled 108. This is like a Bermuda Triangle of forests of sorts. I'm not quite sure yet. The man talks to himself saying, "Follow the light." He comes across a scarecrow-like figure with the same kind of sign on it and checks his watch. A flock of crows fly above him. He starts climbing a tree as darkness sets in. We get ominous rumbling and a jump scare from a crow. He then falls off the tree about 30 feet down onto his back. Barely breathing, he screams and crawls to his bag. He rests upon the tree. A mysterious creature lurks among him and approaches through the fog. The creature drags the man away as he screams for his life. Now, we don't get to see the monster here. He kind of just gets dragged off and killed, apparently. Then we get the title card, The Watchers. So that's all we know at the beginning of the film. There's a mysterious forest, and creatures live there who will chase you down and kill you. Great. We then cut to a scene with a news report in the background at a reptile center. Our main character, played by Dakota Fanning, her name is Mina, hits a vape. That's the very first shot that we get of her. This film makes us very aware that she vapes. She's apparently drawing a sketch of sorts of someone as a man talks to her about some new reptile cage technology. Maybe this is like foreshadowing for the cage she's about to find herself in the film. Coworker talks about a bird, a rare bird that was dropped off at the shelter a few days ago. Apparently this bird is extremely loyal, which is very important for the ending of the film. She has to take this bird to a client in the Irish countryside, conveniently located near the mysterious forest. Pretty contrived, but at least it gets the film going. Whatever. She takes the bird home to her apartment, still holding her vape. Yes, we get it. She vapes, okay? Amazing. She then talks to the bird, giving us some exposition. Apparently, her mom died 15 years ago, and the bird, mimics her or something. I don't know. This has no consequence on the film. The bird being able to talk and mimic her doesn't really have consequences on the film. Pretty weird. It seems as if she's going out tonight. She gets ready by putting on a wig and disguising herself as a brunette girl instead of a blonde girl. Something that sort of relates to the twist or the theme of this film, and you'll see what I mean in a bit. She gets to a bar that night and she meets a gentleman. She says she's a dancer, a ballerina, as she blatantly lies to this man. Apparently she likes to go out at night, disguise herself, and sleep with different people. Cool. I don't know what this means. Really, a lot of the film is going to be like that, so hold on to your seats. Now, the next day, she's in the car with her bird, and she tells the bird that she wouldn't like it if she knew the real her. This is foreshadowing some sort of mystery or intrigue surrounding the character here. Perhaps there's a darker side to her that we don't know about. She gets a voicemail from her friend. Her friend says she's worried about her and how she's dealing with her loss, the loss of her mother. She doesn't call the friend back, and we get a shot of all the missing people on a public bulletin board as she drives deeper into the forest. Spooky. She drives into the forest, her phone glitches out, and the electronics in her car fail as her car suddenly stops working as well. She's now stuck dead in the middle of the forest. Well, not dead, but you know what I mean. She's in the dead middle of the forest. The bird says, "Try not to die." What? I don't know where it learned this piece of dialogue. It serves no purpose for the story other than to spook us out. Nice. Try not to die, that's the most clever thing you could say. At this point, the film is turning into a comedy for me. She walks further into the forest as she screams for help. She turns to find her car, but it's gone. She takes the bird off the ground, talks to it, and says she might as well give it a name. She calls it Darwin. Again, perhaps relating to a greater theme of this film, as Darwin was known for studying the evolution of humans. A man who learned a lot about survival and genetics, which is kind of important to this film, but it's all convoluted in the end. You'll see what I mean. We then get another jump scare from the crows, and this is the most bothersome thing about this scary movie. Basically, all of the jump scares in this movie, there's about 4 or 5 of them, are very inconsequential and just there to keep you interested. They have no effect on the story. We then see a mysterious figure running past the camera through the forest. She sees it's an older woman and she chases her down. Not sure yet why the older woman is using jump scare tactics on the girl instead of just helping her, because she clearly helps her 5 seconds later by opening a door to a mysterious room in the middle of the forest, telling our main character Mina that she has 5 seconds to get inside. Otherwise, she could be dead. I don't know why she doesn't just help her to the door. She makes her kind of work for it. Cool. She then comes to a place called the coupe. It's the mysterious room that the old lady welcomed her into. There are 3 others there outside of Mina. We have the old lady, whose name is Madeline. We have a kid named Danny, and we have a younger girl named Kiara. So we got Madeline, Mina, Kiara, and Danny, our 4 characters in the coupe. Now, the coupe is sort of this enclosed room with a table, a couch, a TV, and a mirrored wall of sorts. Turns out it's actually a window, as we learn later, but right now it looks like just a simple mirrored wall. Madeline says they'll be interested in someone new. Who's them? We don't know yet. Well, it's the Watchers, obviously, but yeah, we don't exactly know who or what they are. They all line up preparing for something, and the older lady says, "We call them the Watchers." Thanks, I figured. Not sure what gave it away. Anyways, Kiara says they come every night after sunset, and they watch us until the sun rises. The boy Danny says they're here, but we can't really see them at all still. I don't know how he knows this. Maybe he's got telepathy. Weird. They say the Watchers will not ever come inside. They just want to look at us. They just want to look at us. Nothing more. The group makes Mina, our main character, step forward to the mirror wall. It's obviously a 2-way window, but it looks like a mirror at night because there's no lights outside. We then pan to a wide shot revealing the cabin or this bunker in the woods. The coupe. It's very far, very deep into the forest, very unlikely that anyone can escape on foot with the amount of daylight required to reach the end. We don't see anything in this wide shot. We don't see the Watchers yet for a while, so just hang tight. Mina asks what the Watchers are doing, and Madeline says, "Applause for you." Apparently, they're clapping. I'm not sure. We don't really see this, so whatever. We cut back to Mina's face in the room. She stares at the mirror and starts to see through it into the forest the next day. She grabs the bird, Darwin, and says they're leaving. So she tries to head out and escape. The group warns her not to leave, but eventually they let her go, and she says the group is just crazy. She wants to get the fuck out of there. She then gets spooked by a vision of a girl in the woods and starts running. She comes to a clearing and realizes she's absolutely fucked in the middle of a huge forest, obviously. She then gets jump scared, again, our second jump scare, by the old lady, and the lady tells her no one has ever escaped and the forest will drive you mad. She talks about the boundaries, the signposts that we saw in the beginning of the movie. Apparently they're about a half-day trip outside the room, all around the forest, that show the limits of how far you can safely get without getting lost at night. Apparently the signs were made by a man called the Professor, who we just learned about, but we don't really know much about him other than his name, the Professor. Madeline, the old lady, takes her back to the coupe to meet the Watchers, finally. The boy character, Danny, is like mentally insane or autistic, and he gives these over-the-top short monologues that are often played in the trailers, I think. I don't know, he's just a character that's there just to hype things up, seemingly. He does have a small effect on the plot, and he ends up really serving no greater purpose, but he's there to make the movie interesting, I guess. A record player starts playing music now, and Kiara begins to dance in front of the mirror wall. We then see a reality show playing on their TV about 12 strangers trapped in a house. Very on the nose. We get it. I guess it's an allegory for what's going on with the characters. This whole reality show allegory doesn't really pay off other than to kind of set a vibe and remind us of the, goings on of the movie in a clever way, I guess. It's just kind of weird. Mina looks at the DVD case for the TV show she's playing, and it says property of Professor RK. I forget his name, so I'm just going to keep calling him Professor. All right, that's fine. The next day, Kiara and Mina are walking the forest, and she talks about gathering plants to make medicines like pain relief. I don't know where she's making these medicines, because in the room, we only see a table, a TV, and a couch. We don't see any sort of cooking or crafting area, nothing. The world building of this film and the logic of this film is already broken right off the rip for me. It's just like, I don't know, they toss toss these little clever details in that actually don't make any sense when you think about it beyond the surface. Quite strange. Not a great sign for the writing. Kiara mentions her husband, I think his name's John, who left 6 days ago. I think this is the guy who died in the beginning of the movie. That would make sense. She then talks about a plant that is good for helping with inflammation and bleeding. Possible foreshadowing? Probably not. None of this actually ends up mattering at all. Very strange. Mina then asks what the Watchers want. Madeline has a theory that they are just trying to find out what drives a person mad. Very confusing. Kiara then shows Mina the burrows. They're these holes that are connected underground like a system of tunnels. It's not clear how they know this because apparently none of them have been down there and they aren't supposed to go down there. But perhaps Madeline has the key to all this because we'll reveal something later on in the film that clues us in that she might know more than she says initially. Now, this is where the Watchers apparently go during the daylight hours when it's safe for our human characters to walk around. They say as long as the sun's out, there is nothing to be afraid of. Cool. We're learning the mechanics of this world, and that's probably the most interesting part of the story for me. Kiara then says she doesn't know how long she's been there because it's hard to keep track of the days, but this is directly contradicted later when the boy Danny says exactly how long he's been there down to the day. So if they just use his brain and his math, they should be able to figure out how long they've been there as well. I don't know. The film just doesn't make sense a lot. That's just going to happen. Mina is now drawing a sketch of the group members, and Madeline starts to give Mina the rules. There are a few rules, and they go like this. Don't turn your back to the mirror. Don't open the door after dark. Don't go near the burrows. Always stay in the light. Madeline says we are in their territory, the Watchers' territory, and they allow us to live if we stay in the light and follow the rules. We cut to later that night when the group is in the coupe, the group coupe. Anyways, Mina approaches the mirror wall. She puts her ear up to it, but nothing happens, and then she lays down. But then immediately we hear sounds from the outside, and Madeline tells Mina, it's your turn. Let them see you. But again, nothing actually happens here. Very strange. Like, there's a lot of stuff in this movie where there's tension trying to be driven by the writing, but there's no payoff for it. It's kind of frustrating in the end when you watch it. Hopefully you're having more fun watching this video instead of watching the movie, because honestly, I don't think it's worth it. That's why I'm making this video. We cut to the next day where Danny is showing his role in the group as the hunter. You know, we had Kiara gathering herbs and spices or whatever, making medicines, and Danny is the hunter. He traps animals like birds for food. And again, where are they cooking this shit? Where are they making the medicines? It's very unclear because the room is tiny and we never see anything but a couch, a TV, and a table. So what the hell? Danny says he's been there for 8 months and 3 days. So again, he should probably have the ability to tell everyone else how long they've been there. Apparently, he's never seen a Watcher, only heard them and heard stories from Madeline. No one sees a Watcher and survives, according to Madeline. Mina then convinces Danny to lower her into one of the burrows where she's not supposed to go. Danny doesn't want to break the rules at first, but he gets convinced. He's impulsive and maybe autistic. Mina goes in and Danny says, don't go further than the light allows you. So she uses a tiny Bic lighter to navigate around the burrow, and she finds an old newspaper from 1992 that says something about peace talks, maybe like a Cold War thing or something. We're not sure. She finds an old video camera. She finds also an old stuffed bunny toy and gets jump scared by a bug. Again, an inconsequential, meaningless jump scare that has no effect or relation to the story. That's a theme in this movie, in the writing at least. She also finds an old bike as well and makes Danny bring it up to the surface with the rope that she used to get down there. She then has her first real spooky encounter with a potential Watcher. She turns around and sees a shadowy figure that reaches out with a hand. Very creepy. She found a bunch of other items as well, like a canteen and a flashlight, maybe items that could help them escape further into the forest than they've ever been before. Mina tells Madeline that they might have a chance to make it out now, and Madeline's not too pleased with this. She tries to ask her about what Mina saw in the burrow, but Mina says she never saw anything. She's lying, obviously. Now we cut to Danny, and he's playing with the camera inside the coupe, and he hooks it up to the TV. He says electronics only work in the room. He then says they can put the camera outside tonight and see the Watchers. It's like a surveillance feed of sorts. I thought the electronics don't work outside the room, but I guess as long as it's plugged in inside the room, it does work. Kind of confusing, but I'll let it pass. So Danny sets the camera outside, and later that night, the group tries to act normal and draw the Watchers back in, as they come every night. That's how this goes. Every night, the Watchers come and get a look at the group through the window mirror. They begin to hear knocks outside the door, but Madeline says it's just a trick. Somehow she knows what the Watchers are up to, perhaps. Kiara goes to the door to find out what it is, and apparently it's her husband, John, the guy who died in the beginning of the film. But Madeline won't allow her to break the rules and open the door. Again, you can't open the door at night. She says the Watchers are baiting us. It's a trick. The group really wants to open the door, but still, Madeline does not want to do it. She also breaks the rules herself here as she turns her back to the mirror for most of this conversation and half of this scene at least. So what the hell's going on? What the hell's going on with Madeline? Now, Mina finally admits to Madeline that she did go into the hole. And Madeline says Mina is angry and selfish and behaves like a child. Again, we never really see any motivation for this to be true. So why is Madeline even saying this? It just seems like the writers want us to know that Mina is a selfish, childlike character without actually showing us this. Very strange. Now, Mina says she's not going to stay and she's going to be the one to finally escape. Madeline then tells Kiara to ask her husband something only he would know, to figure out if it's really him. My question is, if the Watchers can make it seem like her husband is outside, possibly possessing his body or creating a duplicate of him or an illusion of sorts, would they not also be able to answer this question? Like if they have magical powers of sorts? I'm not really sure. The film is very vague and confusing. I don't know what makes Madeline so sure this will even work. Kiara asks why, and Madeline says, shut the fuck up and trust me. I mean, why can't you just give like a 10-second explanation, please? Please? I hate these parts in films when they don't explain things and they just say, trust me, even though they clearly have enough time to, get a sentence or two out. Come on, just explain. Anyways, Kiara asks her husband what book she's been reading, something only he would know. Again, Madeline has had this whole conversation while breaking her rule of not turning her back to the mirror. Interesting. Now they make the husband show his face to the camera after he couldn't answer the question, but he gets dragged away. The Watchers then hit the camera and start beating on the glass and the door and the whole coupe as a whole. It just starts pounding everywhere. Madeline says it's all going to be over if they manage to break the glass, but they only manage to crack it a little. Apparently the Watchers are angry, but they go away because we cut to the next day as Madeline throws the bike back into the hole and says they will find another way out instead. Okay. Don't know what your other way will be, but let's keep it moving. We then get a shot from the underground burrow and a Watcher snatches the bike into the shadows and then seemingly closes the hole up. The light goes away. I don't know. Weird. We then randomly cut to a flashback of Mina and her sister, our main character, when they were young. Apparently they're twins and they were out with her mom in the car. They're on the road, a road trip, or they're running an errand of sorts. And Mina apparently doesn't follow the rules as she's playing with the window, keeping it open. Her mom decides to then crush Mina's fingers in the window, and this causes a panic, making the mom crash head-on into a semi-truck, and she dies. At this point, it was unclear if the sister died too. The mom obviously died as she was smashed head-on, but perhaps both her and her sister survived. It was all Mina's fault, she says, but no, not really. It's just the mom being a piece of shit, if you ask me. We then get a monologue where Mina talks about winter making it harder for them to escape, and they're all beginning to go crazy. We don't see signs of them going crazy. She just kind of says it. Again, a lot of tell don't show storytelling going on here, which is not a great sign for a movie. I'm starting to understand the rating of this film as we're halfway through and barely anything has happened. Now, Mina is gathering herbs just like Kiara was in the beginning, and she sees Madeline yelling at Daniel for being too slow. Not really sure why we have this conflict. It's kind of contrived. During the daytime, the window is fully see-through, and we get a shot of Kiara looking through it as the camera pans to the floor, revealing a map of the forest seemingly created by the group here. We get a small conversation between Kiara and Mina, but then a minute later, Kiara vanishes and leaves the door open. Mina runs after her. Kiara is standing over a hole and talks about finally accepting her husband's death as she wants to join him and commit suicide by jumping into the hole. Mina talks her down, and the two girls then hear Daniel and Madeline fighting again in the forest. But this time, Daniel has tied Madeline up and says, it's our rules now. He's kind of revolting against their leader here. Cool. Danny runs back to the coupe with Kiara before the other girls can get there. Mina helps Madeline get untied, and they get trapped out for the night by Danny. Kiara's not so on board with this plan, but Danny remains firm and keeps them locked out for now. So Mina and Madeline now go hiding under a tree. They mention that it's rotting. Convenient. A tree right next to the coupe that happens to be rotting and smelling so much that it covers their scent so the Watchers can't find them. Again, very contrived. There was no mention of this rotting tree earlier. All they had to do was maybe make this a plot detail earlier on to clue us in and make this world make a little more sense. But it just basically a rotting tree comes out of nowhere that perfectly allows them to, stay outside and hide from the Watchers. Now we cut back to Danny and Kiara preparing for the Watchers to come view them inside the coupe. Mina hears something and looks up at the tree, and she sees a hand of the Watcher as Madeline covers her mouth. We finally see a good look of the Watcher, a very tall, skinny, ugly, human-esque creature with strange long-fingered hands and long, thin hair. Kind of like a Slenderman Lady Edition or something. I'm not sure. The Watcher then calls all the other Watchers as a group of them rush past the girls around the tree. Danny screams at the Watchers, telling them that the girls broke the rules and they're not in the coupe tonight with him and Kiara. The Watchers then go on the hunt for Madeline and Mina in the forest as they scatter away from the coupe. Madeline and Mina then make their way back to the door of the coupe, banging on it, convincing Danny to open the door. Mina is the one that's able to convince Danny by telling him the story of the tragic passing of her mother and how it was all her fault, and that Danny will have this same guilt for the rest of his life if he lets them die out there. Nice. So he finally opens the door and lets them in. Again, Danny's sort of like autistic or crazy or weird. I'm not sure. So who knows why he does what he does. Madeline then starts to reveal her motivation. She was a professor at a university and she studied folklore and history and was curious about this place. So she purposely came here to study it, to find out what the hell was going on in this forest. She talks about how one day when she was on her own before everyone was here, she was hunting after hours and she saw a version of herself, a strange, naked, harrowed version of herself. Maybe a ghost or a ghoul or a creature of sorts. Apparently, she's the only one that can stay out at night. An important detail for later. She reveals to the group that she knows the Watchers are an ancient species, sometimes referred to in history by changelings, the winged people, or fairies. Yes, apparently the Watchers in this movie are fucking fairies. It gets weirder. Well, we don't get that much more actual information about the fairies, but yeah, they're fairies. She says the Watchers study the humans at the coupe so that they can become them. Not sure how or why. This is just very strange right now. Perhaps we'll get some explanations down the line here. She says that's why they're never going to let us leave because, you know, they need to study us. They need to become human. I guess it's simple enough to become human by just looking at humans sleeping and standing and sitting and sometimes dancing in a room at night. Again, I don't know. This is the stupidest thing I've ever heard so far this year in any movie. I swear to God. We then hear the Watchers outside mimicking words from the different group members. We hear different snippets from earlier in the film. It's clearly the Watchers trying to become the same humans as the group here. Very strange. They then go to block the door with a table and they turn around, and as the Watchers are beating on the door, they turn around and randomly find a trap door underneath a carpet. Apparently for a whole entire year, nobody ever thought to look underneath the carpet. I mean, isn't that like 101 in escape rooms, is like look everywhere underneath shit, pull back carpets, take paintings down? Like, I'm starting to lose my mind in this movie, okay? Maybe the forest is driving me mad. It's more likely just the goddamn shitty movie that I'm watching. Anyways, moving forward. The group finally manages to uncover an underground bunker, a ladder of sorts, underneath the trap door, and they get into the bunker as soon as the Watchers conveniently break the door open and break the glass right when they close the hatch. Again, really contrived timing, classic shitty storytelling. I don't know what to say here. I really don't. I just got to go with it at this point. They get down to this secret underground bunker and I'm getting strange Lost television series or J.J. Abrams mystery box vibes. Yeah, nothing's making sense yet, but hopefully soon. Now there's a bunch of food and TVs and electronics, including a computer with no network connection, but a bunch of files on it. They open the folders and they find these videos. Now these are videotapes of the professor mentioned earlier, the guy who made the signposts and the guy who had his name on the DVD cover earlier in the film. The boy then says literally out loud, after the professor introduces himself as the professor on the video, the boy says, "It's him, the professor." Yeah, no shit, Sherlock. Clearly this kid is autistic, or he's just a stand-in for the writers to hammer in exposition, or both. Now, apparently the professor built this place he calls the Wonderland. It's this bunker fortress in the middle of the forest, meant to study the Watchers or the fairies or the changelings or whatever these creatures are. They watch more and more footage as the professor reveals plot details and exposition as he says the Watchers are getting closer to mastering his image and becoming him. We're not sure how long it takes to do this process, but apparently it's not an overnight thing. The professor then reveals he lured in local townfolk to help him build the bunker by offering work to people in need. And he ends up sacrificing them to the Watchers as he can't afford to keep them all alive. Not sure why. I mean, there seems to be a lot of food down there and a lot of space in the bunker, so I'm not sure why he could not just keep the workers down there with him. Who knows? Maybe he's just a selfish bastard. He says the place was built on the blood of innocent people in the pursuit of knowledge. He talks about a small girl version of the Watcher who was different than the rest. An important detail that kind of gets paid off but really has no crazy meaning. The professor talks about imagining harnessing the power of the Watchers to cheat death, you know, to possibly bring people back to life. The power of duplication. On the next recording, they see he's lured in one of the Watchers as he tries to tame it. He has it kind of tied up or locked up, but it's still attempting to be very violent as he tries to talk to it and calm it down. You know, it's still an animal. It's still a crazy creature. In the next video, he talks about being in the bunker for 300 days and losing his mind, losing his humanity. He's going to kill the creature he lured in, and he's going to kill himself. Now, he talks also about a boat that he left right outside one of the boundary markers at a river. He tells whoever finds this recording to escape and go to his office and destroy all records of this place in the forest. He wants no one to come back, no one to discover what he found. Obviously, it's pretty dangerous and meaningless. So yeah, let's get rid of this shit. I'm going to destroy this movie from my brain when I'm done here too. Now he leaves the bunker, goes up the ladder, and we hear him shoot himself and the Watcher. We don't see it, but we do hear it. Pretty obvious he did what he said he was going to do. After this very depressing experience watching this professor confess his findings on these tapes, all of a sudden Kiara is super happy and she turns on some music and says they should dance because it's their last night there. They plan on leaving the very next morning to escape in the boat left by the professor. Danny talks about his abusive father opening up to Kiara, and she says, don't worry, you don't have to go home when we go back. You can stay with me. You can get a happy ending. And we all know in horror movies, when somebody is offered a happy ending, they never get it. Take notes. The next morning, they prepare and they leave the hatch. Madeline talks about how the forest will try to deceive them and try to keep them trapped. We never really see any of this happen. She just says that it will happen, but it doesn't really happen for most of them, except for Danny, which we'll see in a second. They finally reach the boundary marker mentioned by the professor, and they let the bird, Darwin, out of its cage. Now, earlier in the film, I forgot to mention this, but the professor said follow the birds once you get to the signpost. So conveniently, they have a fucking bird and they let it out. Not sure how the bird knows exactly where to go, whatever. Maybe there's a detail I'm missing, but it's still very contrived, very odd. Doesn't make a lot of sense. They randomly also come upon a grave site, conveniently, for more exposition of the fairies. And Madeline talks about how the fairies once lived as gods among humans, a bridge between nature and man. But over time, humans turned on them, fought them, and banished the fairies underground, sealing them in a tomb with a door that would prevent them from escaping. So they burrowed their way out in these holes that we see in the forest. For centuries, they clawed away at the surface, but they had lost their magic and their wings, and they were bound to the forest. Somehow, I guess they're bound to the forest. I don't know. It doesn't make sense. It's magic, blah, blah, blah. Just bullshit. Anyways, they keep moving and they follow the bird. Again, this bird that's been in captivity for God knows how long just escapes, and because the plot mentioned that it was very loyal, I guess it just follows along above them. Weird. So they keep following it and moving through the forest. It's getting colder and it starts raining. Things are getting tough for them out here in this forest. Madeline says, don't worry, they'll be there any minute as a flock of crows flies overhead suddenly. Again, more birds they can follow, as the professor mentioned. I don't know, man. These birds are really contrived. They really started to piss me off. Then we finally get some tension in their journey as we get a shot of the Watchers chasing them right when they arrive at the river, seemingly pretty safe and far enough away from the Watchers. They see the boat mentioned by the professor. It's on the shore and they make their way to it. Danny gets distracted though and gets left behind. There's a voice calling him from the forest. We then cut to him as he's dragging John, the husband from earlier in the film, out of the forest, but it's actually a Watcher, and it starts to kill him as it marks his head with the fingernail and then snaps his neck. Okay, nice. The Watcher then turns from John into Danny, transforming, and we get a shot of a bunch of the Watchers who now just look like normal naked people and not the monsters that we saw earlier. Cool? I have no fucking clue what's going on, man. I really don't. They see the boat on the shore and they make their way to it. The trio finally manages to escape into the river in the boat, and they say the Watchers can't swim, or at least Madeline says this. Again, how does she know this? We don't know yet, but we'll find out. After floating for about a day, they come to a bridge off the river and they get a ride from a local bus. They board the bus and everyone stares at them awkwardly. Mina hears an old man's radio playing music and asks him to turn it up for no reason. I don't know. It's just to make the end of the film seem happier as happy music plays during the bus ride. I don't know. It's really stupid. Mina then tells the trio that she's going to go destroy the evidence at the professor's office. Now, my question is, if he was stuck out here the whole time, how did he get all of his research and evidence back to his office? Or did he make all that research and evidence before he ever built the bunker? It's very unclear and very nonsensical. Just doesn't make sense. We cut to Mina at home finally, and she takes a shower. She stares at herself in the mirror, and we cut back to the flashback of her and her sister from earlier. Apparently, her and her sister both survived the crash. The next day, she gets into the office of the professor by telling the university he worked at that he was her uncle. No ID required. She can just walk into this perfectly preserved office. All the research is untouched. They haven't moved anything out for years. She goes through all of his research, and she finds a recording. The professor talks about a golden era when the fairies were guardians among us and friends, even lovers, producing children. These are half-blooded children, and they changed everything. They could transform and replicate humans who had died, but the humans cursed and banished these fairies, and apparently the halflings went extinct. So his job was to hunt them down, to see if they maybe didn't become extinct. Mina then sees a tapestry depicting the legend of the fairies. Cool, really amazing, just awesome. Awesome world building, super cool lore, man. We then cut to nighttime where Mina gets dropped off at Kiara's house by a taxi. She tells Kiara about the research she found, and she shows her pictures she found at the office. Pictures of Madeline, apparently the professor's wife. Apparently she asked the front desk about this, and they didn't even question why the niece of the uncle professor had no clue that he had a wife. I mean, wouldn't this be something, if you were close with your uncle, that you would know? I don't know. Again, the film's very stupid, so it doesn't matter. She also discovered one more thing, an obituary of Madeline. She died before she ever met the girls, before she ever went to the bunker, apparently from lung cancer. Now, apparently he wanted to bring his wife back to life by having the halflings transform into her, a replica of sorts. Apparently, the real Madeline was gone, and the one we've seen the whole time is a halfling, one of these extinct magical half-human, half-fairy creatures. That's the twist. That's the huge twist. We also find out that Kiara is actually Madeline, the halfling. She's transformed into Kiara to deceive Mina. The real Kiara shows back up at her house and gets knocked out while Madeline and Mina have a deep discussion about her humanity and about her people and about how Madeline should go discover her own kind and leave the humans alone. Mina gives some stupid speech about how she knows what it's like to feel half of herself being a monster, and she convinces Madeline to leave and to find more of her kind and reconcile with who she really is. Now, this is kind of a parallel to Madeline's trauma and experience as a human, as she has to live with that other half of her, the monster that is the little girl that killed her mother. You know, when she was younger, she was apparently responsible for the death of her mother. So that's the side of her that's apparently a monster. Even though in my eyes, it was more of the mom's fault for being a shitty driver and for crunching her kid's fingers in the window. So again, this is absolutely fucking ridiculous. We then cut to a scene in the future where Mina has apparently met back up with her twin sister, and they've reconnected. They've, gotten over their trauma. They've gotten over the past. And apparently, Mina's been forgiven for causing the death of her mother. She talks about Madeline. She talks about the halfling who keeps watching over her now in different forms. And that's where the movie ends. We get a shot of Madeline watching over the house of the sisters as she's in a new form, the form of a little girl. And then cut. That's where we end the film. So, yeah, I don't even know where to begin to make sense of this film, guys. To me, it was a very, very absolutely contrived and poorly told allegory about getting over a certain side of yourself and reconciling with the part of yourself that's darker. And to me, it just utterly failed at telling that story because of the logic, the boring characters, and the workings of the plot that just seemed to be utterly contrived and nonsensical. I think it was trying to be something way too deep, and it just missed the mark on that. I mean, I could write a collegiate level thesis about all the ways this movie tries and fails, but I simply don't even have the time to do that. So that's really all I got for you guys in this video. I want you guys to tell me in the comments what you thought of the story, what it meant to you, and if it made any goddamn sense. Now, apparently Madeline was a halfling the whole time, and she never learned how to truly become human, but in perfect timing, by the end of the film, she did learn how to become a human. I don't know, man. My brain is breaking when trying to think about this film and try to explain it. And so I'm just left utterly confused and lost by what this film is even, attempting to do with its weird lore and mystery and world building. Again, a classic M. Night Shyamalan attempt, but this time in the form of his daughter, Ishana. So, I mean, I guess that's what we're going to get from this family from now on, is these really contrived mystery horror thrillers that end up almost making sense and having a message that's just poorly delivered. But yeah, anyways, in my eyes, there's just too much wrong with this film for me to give it anything other than a D plus at best. A 50% I think is a pretty fair, maybe generous rating. I don't know. You guys tell me in the comments if you watched it or if you watched this video, what you think about the story and the film, what it means to you. And yeah, there's just so much wrong with it. I don't even want to spend more time talking about it. I'm gonna go delete it from my brain, if you will. Anyways, this has been Stark Cinema. I love you guys 3000. Like, comment, and subscribe. I'll see you on the next video.